Let's also bring on board Mr. Gaurang Shah, Senior Vice President at Geojit Financial Services. Thank you for joining us here, Gaurang. Always a pleasure speaking to you. And we have lots to track this week. We have the interim budget on Thursday. FOMC meet in the US is also scheduled for Wednesday. Major earnings from ITC, Adani Ports, Bajaj Finance, to name a few. What will you be focusing on this week, sir?
So I think the core focus definitely, first of all, morning to you and all the viewers, Suyash. I think it's going to be budget because that's going to be an event. Not to forget, Honorable Finance Minister has also mentioned that it's going to be a budget on account due to the implementation of Code of Conduct. But expectation in terms of employment generation, policy changes, budgetary allocation towards defense, Indian Railways, power generation, power transmission, distribution, power equipments, and of course towards agri sector is what is largely to be rolled out. And it's over and above that on the positive side will only soothe these sentiments. And of course, the FOMC meet would keep the markets a little bit choppy on fallback of the announcements that the chair will make. And tracking the Q3 earnings is going to be also on the focus. So it's going to be a little bit challenging week, but below, as we spoke last time also, Suyash, Nifty sub 21,300, and I had also mentioned last time when we discussed that we may break 21,300 intraday. But giving a close below that looks a little bit difficult, and that's what exactly has happened. And we are trading at 21,500, if I'm not mistaken, currently.
Right.
So there is positive tailwind, but because of the events domestically and globally, I think it's going to be a little bit choppy.
All right, and a lot of the global cues now that have turned unfavorable. The US 10-year yields have picked up by about 35 to 40 basis points in the last month or so. What does that indicate? Does it, give us some clue that the rate cuts which we were anticipating, at least in the US, to come from March of this year, will be pushed back to the second half of 2024?
So the date was not given by the Fed, right? That was the anticipation that all of us had. And central banks and the chiefs don't act as per the expectation of the market participants. They do according to their wisdom and understanding. And I think US doing it in March or later is something that US and the authorities have to look at. We have to look at our central bank and what do they have to say. And of course, in the credit policy that we've seen the latest, the statements made by the Honorable Governor were absolutely clear. And he also mentioned that as far as India is concerned, we are in a much better position. And that's what he's been reflecting upon over the last couple of credit policies. So we are in a better shape compared to the rest of the world. And I think we should remain that way and even better off. So, like I said, Suyash, can't really have any kind of, forward-looking thoughts or opinion about what foreign central banks will do or the chiefs will do. But we have to look at our domestic data points with more confidence and convincing ability.
And sir, talking about RBI, what's the expectation as far as we are concerned? When will the rate cut cycle begin for us?
So I don't know whether we discussed this last time, but our view was at Geojit that possibly if all goes well, especially the inflation front and the crude oil front, if there is no major scare, then we can expect possibly first 3 calendar years, that is Jan, Feb, March. But everything is data driven, Suyash. So let's hope that we do well as far as these two crucial indicators are concerned, that is inflation as well as crude oil prices, because we have a high dependency on import of crude oil.
Mr. Shah, crude oil prices now, they are near a 2-month high. We were trading in a range of about $75 to $80 a barrel. I'm talking about Brent crude here. But over the weekend, over the last 3 days, we have seen about a 4% spike. In fact, we are very close to 83, in fact, above $83 a barrel. Is that concerning? Can we reach, or can crude prices get back to that $90 plus barrel that we had seen, in November and October of 2023?
Well, to put it absolutely lightly, I think the situation in the Red Sea, if it has to deteriorate further thanks to the jokers called Houthi rebels, then there is no assumption that we can put in terms of where the crude oil prices can reach. But appropriate steps are taken by the alliance, and possibly there could be some disturbances. Let's hope that there's no large escalation in terms of global supply lines as far as crude is concerned. Uh, News-based driven spike ups will definitely be witnessed in the immediate short to medium term, and any cool off will lead to some amount of lower levels in terms of crude oil. But our focus, I guess, our government's focus is going to be procuring our energy requirement in form of crude oil from those destinations where we don't have these kind of scares.
Right, and coming back to the global, so domestic cues, we are in the midst of the earnings season, and ITC is expected to report its December quarter earnings today. The expectation is that it is going to be a subdued quarter. Revenue is expected to rise by about 5%. Now, this is the street's expectation on a year-on-year basis to 17,000 crore. And EBITDA, that's expected to see about a 3.5% bump up on a year-on-year basis, again to 6,435 crore. Margins are expected to decline from the previous year by about 70 basis points to 37.7%, and net profit is expected to rise by just 2% to 5,130 crore. Even I was looking at the expectations, a broader expectation segment wise, the cigarette volumes, now that which is a major contributor for ITC's revenue, that's expected to be flat on a year on year basis. It's expected to come somewhere around 0 to 2%. FMCG business is expected to do well, see a low double digit growth of about 10 to 12%. Hotel revenue is expected to see a mid double digit growth from of about 12 to 15%. Now, Gaurang, coming back to you, what's your expectation from ITC? And also I wanted to talk about the stock, because phenomenal returns it has given over the last 1 year, but we are seeing some bit of a correction in the last couple of months.
It's gone back into that hibernation zone which it used to be, and of course the long-awaited news or announcement in terms of hiving off their hotel business has now come through, and the consolidation has happened after that particular announcement because it didn't go as per the market expectation. But we have to leave it to the wisdom of the management that they want to do hiving off of business, whether it is hotels or otherwise. So as a disclosure, we do have positive coverage on the buy side as far as ITC is concerned. Rural and semi-urban demand was a little bit on the lower side, not only for ITC but the rest of the FMCG pack, and that was thanks to due to the erratic monsoon that we had. Input cost also something that troubled FMCG companies, not only ITC. So it could be a quarter wherein we could see a little bit of lower numbers in terms of different business verticals that ITC has. But overall, I think over a longer period of time, they should do quite well, barring this particular quarter.
And what are you making of this weakness in the rural demand? We have seen in the last 3 or 4 quarters. Do you expect some measures from the government or maybe in the interim budget to prop up that rural demand that has been lacking?
So in the budget, other than giving a push to the, because a large part of our population depends on the agri sector, let's face it, Suyash, and I think they have to do appropriate steps to bring up the standard of earning and living for all those percentage of people who are associated with the agri sector. And it's going to be very crucial for India because India also has a large population to feed. So agri sector is where we expect the finance minister to touch upon a little bit. Other than that, defense, power generation, power transmission, power distribution, and railways. I think these are going to be the other sectors that we'll be possibly focusing on as far as announcements in budget are concerned. Of course, inclusive growth and employment generation.
All right, and interesting you mentioned, in the sectors that you just spelled out for us, railways, because that has been a momentum driven sector, but we are seeing some bit of a correction take place, and a lot of other analysts that I've been talking to, their view has suddenly changed. What's your view, sir, on the entire railway pack?
We remain positive, though I won't go into the names specifically, but all those companies which are associated with Indian Railways, whether they are government or private, they are likely to do much better. And let me tell you one thing, Suyash, that large part of our transportation that happens in India is by road. And I was also listening into the comments from the Honorable Minister, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, that he wants to change this particular equation and improve the last mile connectivity as far as Indian railways are concerned, and slowly and steadily increase the percentage of goods and services which are transported by railways, Indian railways. Then this will also bring down the consumption as far as crude oil is concerned. The way we use petrol, diesel, a large part of the commercial vehicles runs on diesel in our country. Of course, now the switch is happening to CNG, but it'll take a while. So I think I would only say that the beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. Some time back, some months back, if you remember last year, a lot of comments were heard for the defense sector also. But from those time to the current level, I think defense stocks have rallied almost about 5-10% or maybe more stock specific. So I think there's a lot that is going to happen for Indian railways, Indian power generation, transmission, distribution, power equipments, and defense included.
All right. Any other particular theme that you're looking at from interim budget to the elections?
Infrastructure is also something that we are focusing on, whether it is national highways, expressways, dedicated freight corridors, port logistics business. I think that should, airports as a matter of fact, Suyash. I think all this should see a decent amount of budgetary allocation.
But Mr. Shah, we are seeing good, amount of capex spends from the government, but private capex is still lagging. What do you think is the reason for that, sir?
You have a big election, so possibly I think private players are just waiting out or taking a pause. But it's not like it's the total full stop. I think wherever the need is there, we are seeing capex getting picked up, and possibly post-election and the outcome. Once we have the decisive government at the center, we should see the steam or the private capex getting fired up on all cylinders.
All right, and sir, before we let you go, what would you advise, our viewers for the medium term? Because we have seen quite a bit of choppiness in the market, as you also pointed out. What's your advice to the retail investors, the small investors out there who are seeing a percent, Nifty gaining 1% and then falling 1% back to back?
Don't look at short-term, medium-term volatility in the markets. Market will throw everything at you, whether you like it or you don't like it. You have to accept it. And if you decide to come and invest into equity markets directly or via mutual fund SIPs or lump sum investments, please bear in mind that markets are exposed to all kind of risk, whether it is locally or globally. And if you want high risk, you have to accept high returns. If you want low risk, you have to accept low returns. And one most sensible advice that I will give is don't just listen to anyone and do your investments. Do a little bit of homework. थोड़ा बहुत पढ़ाई करो, ज्ञान प्राप्त करो और बाद में आप निवेश करो.